Hello, Anne, and welcome to the Spiraling Higher Studio.
So glad to be here with you, Sam.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. I received your gorgeously illustrated book in the mail, which has been on my bedside table this evening or most evenings. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about your inspiration for meditations in the real world and a little bit about your approach to meditation now after having done so much research.
Yes, yes. So my new book, Meditation for the Real World, illuminates the science, but also, as you said, I worked with a New York Times illustrator, so it has these gorgeous illustrations. So I really wanted something that would be accessible. It made me smile when you said it was by your bedside, because I envision this book by the bedside or on a coffee table for your
Mhm.
friends and family to look at, so that your mother-in-law, who was told to meditate by their doctor to lower their blood pressure but can't get into it, can like, oh, okay, I could do that. It's a very engaging style of a book. And I feel like most meditation books are either written by monks or ex monks
Totally.
or neuroscientists telling you the neuroscience, but not the step by step. So this book includes step by
Mm.
step practices where you know how to meditate for that specific situation. So if you're dealing with a headache, or you're trying to sleep, or if you're trying to, get into flow state before a work project or a creative project, these are all different meditation techniques that I would give you if you're depressed versus anxious. So it highlights what you should do in those situations based off of the research and my experience as a yoga therapist, and my experience as a not natural meditator. Like, it did not come natural to me. It was definitely a struggle at first. I used to be like, oh, this is a waste of time. I don't get this. So it infuses that experience that I have as a person that went from really skeptical to loving it and feeling a huge impact in my life.
Yeah, well, that clearly comes through so strongly in your book. And I love how you mentioned those different categories and ways of sort of finding yourself in those situations and then seeking what meditation is good for that. Because I think
Yes.
what gets people stuck is they're like, okay, where do I start with meditation? But your book is like, where do I start if I have a headache? Right? Where do I start if I can't sleep? And that those are things that people can really identify within their own life, which could help lead them into the proper meditation technique. But again, like you said, you weren't a natural meditator. Like, and of course, no one is, right? I mean, if you've
Yes.
ever tried teaching meditation to kids, it's literally so hard. I've actually done this before. And so, given that we're not natural meditators, what was it that actually made it click for you? Like, oh my gosh, now I want to write a book about this. This is something I want to teach people and ultimately bring into your everyday life because habits stack. And so I really
Yes.
want to know a little bit about how you, Anne, went from I'm not a meditator like everyone else that
Mhm.
we talk to I'm the author of a book about meditation.
Yeah, when we get to that point in a yoga class where we'd be doing the meditation part, I'd be like looking at my watch, like, it is time to go. I have things to do. This is a waste of my time. I was type A, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So it just wasn't natural to me. And it's not natural to anybody, as you said. It's a skill we learn, not something we're born with. Like reading, you learn how to read, and then a whole
Mhm.
world opens up in front of you. It expands. And the same thing happens with this skill of meditation. And you get better at it with practice, just like reading. So, I've really wanted to put it in a book format because I feel like everybody's digitizing it and making it an app that's gamified. And those are great. But some of us just need a little break from technology to like relax into it. And so
Yeah.
my journey led me, like starting to get into it. I would, in yoga class, the teachers would be like, oh, try this, try that, and things didn't stick. And then the one thing that stuck with me, we can do it right now, just like a short
Ooh.
version of it, is when you are lying there and you squeeze each body part one by one. Let's just do our shoulders to feel the release there, and then I'll explain the
Yes.
science of it. So take your shoulders and just squeeze them up toward your ears, and pucker your lips, squint your eyes, make a sour face, and exhale, release, drop the shoulders down. We're going to do it two more times. So inhale, squeeze, 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 make a silly face, and release. Last one, really sigh it out. Inhale, squeeze the tension out, 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 and Let it go. And then allow your shoulders to just drop for a moment. Feel the head gently floating up like a balloon. And you might feel as if a weight has been taken off of your shoulders. And if we break into the neuroscience of this, like I didn't know at the time, but now I know it's called progressive muscle relaxation. And it
Mm.
works with your brain to teach it the difference between relaxation and tension. Throughout the day, we're often, scrunching our shoulders towards our ears as we're texting or working or typing, and we don't even notice it. And those muscles need to be taught, okay, this is what it feels like to release. Because if we zoom in to the muscle fibers themselves, when we squeeze a muscle and contract it tightly and it gets shorter, right? It has a greater capacity to lengthen after it's relaxed. It's able
Mm.
to better. And so you might feel, I can see in our shoulders are dropped down a little. You might feel like your shoulders have dropped down a little bit, and they literally have. And so when we did this technique in a yoga class, like head to toe, I was like, oh, that's what relaxation feels like. That's what it feels like to be
Ah.
present.
Wow. I mean, I did the breathing with you and scrunched my shoulders and my face up, right? And I'm
Hmm.
feeling a progressed relaxation. And I love this piece that you have to I've never heard anyone word it that way, that you have to teach your muscles the difference between tension and relaxation, because what I find is that most people are trying to get to relaxation, but it's
Yes.
almost as if their body doesn't know what that state even is.
Or
And
forgot
so
it.
we've forgotten it. And so it's so funny. We even try and chase relaxation from tension, right?
Yeah.
Which is just more tension. But I love this idea that we have to teach ourselves to relax. And maybe that means, yes, experiencing a little bit more tension and contraction than we're used to create that contrast. Because I really feel my shoulders all the way
Yeah.
down now.
Yeah. So, like, different techniques work for different people. It's not one size fits all. And that's what I really want to spread into the world because, you may have tried a meditation technique and you're like, ah, that's not for me. It didn't feel good, or I didn't focus well enough. My mind wandered too much, or I even got more anxious doing it. That doesn't mean you're
Mm,
bad at meditating. That just means that's the wrong technique for you, or possibly the wrong technique for that situation. You need to try a different
yeah.
technique. So I included 83 different techniques in this book. It's not, one size fits all. You got to try and find what works for you.
I love this approach so much because I think, like you said, most meditation books even are written by these monks or like these very holy elderly meditation teachers, right? Doing Kundalini yoga and whatnot. And so, this idea that meditation would be for us really only fits a couple archetypes within our society. It's like you're like the hippie or you're the spiritual girly or boy. And so, what about the regular person who's just on the subway or driving to work? I
Yes.
actually remember reading your book yesterday, and there's a section for driving. Yeah, your
Oh,
gorgeous
yeah.
book. There's a section for driving, and there is a section for commutes. I remember those. And I think that we, as people, unless we fit into those couple categories, we're like, oh, like I'm not, like meditation's for those people. And what I think that your book and your mission is to introduce is that meditation is for the human. Meditation is for the world. And so you don't need to fit one of these archetypes in order to engage in a practice that works for you. And like you said, there's 83 different ways you introduce how we can incorporate this practice into our life.
Yeah, you don't have to sit on a cushion on the floor with chanting in the background and, you know, singing bowls. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be in perfect silence either. You can be, as it is on the cover of the book, there's a woman sitting on a subway or bus, and she's the only one that looks chill. She's got headphones on, and maybe she's listening to an audio meditation. Maybe she's listening to a song that really makes her present. Everybody around her hunched over their cell phones or even computers,
Mm,
just distracted. And she's the only one that looks chill. You can have your eyes wide open. And rather than scrolling while you wait, why not meditate? while you wait. We all have those moments through the day where we just pick up our phone and go right to our email. You could do a 1 minute meditation in that time to reset your nervous system, to get back into presence and into mindfulness. And so, like, there's all these little moments, waiting at the doctor's office, when you go pick up your kids from school, or when you're waiting to arrive in a podcast interview or a Zoom call and nobody's there yet, you're waiting. That's a great moment to have a 1 minute meditation or a few breath meditation.
That's so, so true. And I do want to ask you actually about some of your favorite practices for like the busy minded and the I don't have time for it. But before we go into that, I actually want to talk about and maybe even convince our audience of how impactful this is, because something you
Yes.
shared with us before we got to record was that meditation is the practice you owe for the manifestation of the very book contract of the incredible book we're talking about that's on my bedside table. And so, can you talk about that a bit? Because I think anytime people hear like manifestation, obviously their ears perk up. They're like, what can I do in order to
Yes.
increase my magnetic energy? And of course, it seems like the solution in this case with you would be meditation. But how did that actually play out in your life? What were the exact sort of steps or processes that helped you really attract this book into your life?
Yeah. And there's neuroscience to support this manifestation we can speak of too.
Yes.
So, my first book is actually the one I manifested because I was a nobody. I
Mm.
had no big social media following. I had no agent. I didn't even have a book proposal at this time. I had just graduated from grad school, my master's of science in yoga therapy, and I was looking for jobs. And this book is now, to give you some context, it's called Science of Yoga, and now it's translated into 15 languages and all around the
Wow.
world. So it's come a long way. But back then, I didn't even think I wanted to write a book, but I knew I wanted to have a big project. So I had just finished grad school. I just finished traveling around the world to study Eastern techniques. I was in China to study Tai Chi and to study meditation. And then I went to India to study yoga. So I just like traveled the world and then got my master's degree. And I was looking for jobs and I had 100 rejections in front of me. I mean, I was getting rejections for jobs saying you're overqualified, all different types of jobs that I was applying for. And it was just one after the other. And of course, I felt disappointed when I would get a rejection. But for some reason during that time, I was like really hopeful. I was reading a lot of self help books. I was journaling and meditating a lot. And I even was writing on my mirror the words of what I wanted to feel when I got this job, this next big opportunity that brought together all of my skills, studying to be a massage therapist, working in a cadaver lab, like all the different disparate things. I was like, it's going to bring it together. I even went to art school originally. So there's like all these variety of
Wow.
things. So I was writing on it. Creativity was one of the words that I wanted to bring into my life, and coherence. And I had all these words on my mirror. Later, my graduate school colleagues told me they were about to have an intervention because they thought I went off the deep end. They thought I was being way too woo woo for somebody who was a scientist. But I truly believed, I was meditating. The right opportunity is coming in my way. I know it is. I'm just open to it. I don't know what it is. Am I going to work at a college teaching a course about yoga? Am I going to work at a spa running their program? A hospital? Who knows? Like, I just applied to everything. And during all this application, didn't even notice I had gotten an email from DK, my publisher. And they're part of Penguin Random House, so one of the biggest publishers in the world. And I was so busy applying for jobs, I just kind of ignored the email. So a few weeks later, it was Valentine's Day, I remember, they followed up and they're like, hey, are you interested in this? So I looked a little closer and I was like, whoa, this is big. It's called Science of Yoga. Literally, I just studied and got a master's degree in the science of yoga and the Eastern side of it. It's the book I would have written a book proposal for if I was intending to write a book. So I put that intention out there to have a big project, not even a book. And it came to me in
Mm,
this format of this book. And good thing I had lost my job and then got rejected from 100 jobs. Because if I had gotten any one of those jobs, I wouldn't have had time to write this book.
that's right. Oh my God, that gives me shivers because, whenever I have a client who's experiencing something that they're quick to judge as bad, right? I'm always thinking of that story of I think it's like the farmer with the horse, where like, have you ever heard this where his son is breaking in the horse and then he gets kicked off the horse and then he has like a broken leg or a broken back or something like that, and every one of the neighbors is like, oh no, like we're so sorry about your son, that's terrible. And he's like, maybe. And then these army recruiters come the next day and they can't take him to war because he is injured. And so there's so many different scenarios that they go through where it's
Yeah.
like, maybe, maybe, maybe. But I love the story you shared because the thing that you might have thought was like a very bad situation, like, oh my God, 100 rejections, was the perfect opportunity and space to be born for this book. And so, I mean, it's so funny to me that people consider us crazy or like off our rocker once we start tapping into this energy and believing and hoping and praying. Because what I see in so many of my clients is that people are already believing and hoping and praying. It's just the worst case scenario.
Yes. So what we're doing is that we're changing our neurology. We're shifting to create patterns in our brain that are going to have us thinking in a way that's more like action oriented. You're going to be more likely to take action. Now, what got me the book, the action that got me the book was a random article I had written 6 months ago. I didn't know that, but I think I was putting out the signals to the universe or the powers that be that I wanted this, I desired this perfect opportunity by applying for the
Yeah.
jobs. Even though none of those jobs were the ones that came to be, it was something else totally different. It's still that I was taking action. I was out there
Hmm.
applying for the jobs, writing the articles, doing the things. And when you shift to hope and praying and like really believing, as you said, your brain then starts to take action because you believe in it. And if you
Yes.
don't, then you're just going to, I'll just watch Netflix instead. What's the use? Right?
Yeah, something I talk about with my clients a lot is essentially what we're doing is expanding possibility thinking, because if something's not even a possibility for you, why lift a finger?
Yeah.
Like, right? Our brains are like, why? And so I think that comes back to our original topic, which is meditation, which is what your recent book is about, because I think people think it's not going to do anything, right?
Yes.
So why? If it's not going to do anything, why? And so I'd love for you to talk about what you know based on your research and all of the science of yoga that you've sort of delved into. What are the actual changes that are happening? Because you had a whole section of like your brain on meditation. And
Yes.
yes, I would love to go there because people need the science.
Absolutely. And this is why I am a science educator. It's because it convinces me to practice. I'm more likely to practice when I know, oh, wow, this works. There's a reason that the neuroscientists themselves are doing it and the top
Right.
CEOs with the top coaches in the world and the Olympic athletes, they're all doing it. There's a reason for it. And so I teamed with Harvard neuroscientist Dr. Sarah Lazar to work on meditation for the real world, to integrate the most cutting edge science in order to convince people and show people, because we've had an exponential growth in the research in the past 2 decades. It's really exploded. And what we've seen is first and foremost, what it gets most popularity for is the changes in the brain. So we see immediate effects from meditating. We will change our brainwave activity. As you're listening to me, as we're conversing and you're listening, you're in beta brainwaves right now. But when you meditate, you shift into alpha. Alpha is like more relaxation. And meditation actually brings us into other brainwave patterns like theta that are typically mostly seen in children, this really creativity sort of state. Even we can go into gamma, peak memory consolidation, Or we can go into delta brain waves, which is typically only seen in sleep. And meditation can give you some of those rejuvenation effects as if you're sleeping. So we get that immediate effect with the brainwave and brain activity change. We also release endorphins. So endorphins are those feel good chemicals. It comes from endogenous morphine, so it's also a pain reliever, a natural pain reliever, balancing our hormones and our neurotransmitters. So that is all happening immediately. We're having those effects. You might feel, our cortisol levels go down, our stress hormones go down, your blood pressure goes down, your heart rate goes down right when you start meditating. Now, long term, and I don't mean you need to be a monk, I mean like 8 weeks of meditating, we see changes in the critical areas of the brain that have to do with focus, like the prefrontal
Mhm.
cortex. It actually gets bigger. Or the hippocampus, the part that has to do with memory, that area also gets bigger when we meditate. And there's other areas that are changing just from 8 weeks, and it continues on as you continue to practice. And we see these changes not only to the brain, but that of course helps your mental health when you have better neurochemistry. So you're going to have less depression, anxiety, can help with trauma processing. And then we break into every single system of the body, we can see effects. So the cardiovascular system is a great area of research because, as I mentioned, it lowers your blood pressure in the immediate, but also long term can help you regulate blood pressure, reduce your risk of heart disease. As part of an overall lifestyle program, meditation is a key component in actually reversing heart disease. No pill can do this, only this program having to do with lifestyle changes can. And so there's great effects to your cardiovascular system as well as to your immune system. Less sick days at work, you're going to be more resilient. So we could break down every single system of the body, and even diving into the cells on a cellular level, it changes you. On a genetic level, at the end of our chromosomes, there's telomeres. Those are caps to the chromosomes that get shorter with age, with disease, with anxiety, with depression, trauma, etc. And when we meditate, not only does it preserve the length of them, but profoundly, they've seen that it lengthens telomeres, makes them longer.
Mm.
In essence, making your genes and your cells act younger. So you're less likely to have negative genes express, like, cancer or heart disease or depression. And you're more likely to have positive genes express, like, having good immunity. So there's changes even on that cellular level, measurable changes that we're seeing. And then it starts to bleed into your life. Your relationships improve, your productivity. That's a big area of research that has been shown, because that's one reason why mindfulness has become so popular, is because it does help with
Mhm.
productivity and focus, connection with others. So it just continues on. The list goes on and on. Just like I said earlier, when you learn how to read, when you learn how to meditate, it opens up a whole new world. It affects every aspect of your body and life.
Yeah, I loved hearing all of those just science-based facts because the results are in. There are only positive effects from doing this. And so what it makes me think of is, if we know this, and I think more of the world is catching on, right? Everyone's heard about meditation. Everyone's heard Andy Puttycomb's voice before. Like, everyone's familiar now, the guy from Headspace. But if this is the truth and we know it to be true, why is it so hard?
Yes, because humans are mind wandering machines. A study published in the prestigious journal Science shows that we mind wander 47% of our day. That means when you're doing the dishes, you're thinking about your list of things to do and how somebody said this thing that hurt your feelings, or even, any activity. When you're having sex, you're thinking about something else, right? What they found was when you were present doing that activity, washing the dishes or having sex, it doesn't matter what the activity was, you're more likely to be happy than if you were mind wandering. So not only are we mind wandering machines going into it so often, but our happiness is dependent on our ability to be more present. I mean, when you're washing the dishes and you're listening to music and you're dancing and you're feeling the warm water on your skin, aren't you happier? right? So meditation puts us into flow state more. It helps us to be able to go into that state of present moment awareness. It's like boot camp for your focus. So if you feel like you can't focus very well, meditation is actually the thing to do. People think, oh, I'm
Mhm.
not good at it because my mind wanders. But that's actually the reason you meditate, is to get better at focusing.
Yeah, and to really effectively be more present, because that's why I started meditating more frequently, because I realized that what I really wanted out of all of the things I ever wanted to achieve was actually to be present,
Yeah.
right? Like if I had finished everything and got it all done and did what I had intended to do and made all of the money and became all of the successful things I hoped, then I could relax, then I could be present. And so it's so ironic, because it's almost like we're avoiding the thing that we want to
Because
get
that's
to
what
where we
happiness
want.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, to
That's what
be present.
presence is happiness. That's what the research is suggesting. And so
Mm.
if you can be present now, you can be happy now, and you're going to be more likely to attract more presence and more
Mm.
happiness, right? So practice presence now. Don't wait for some far off thing in the future, because when you get to something in the future, there will be some other far off thing in the future, right, that you continue to strive for. We're always content but never satisfied as humans. We're always striving, which is a wonderful thing, but practice presence now.
Well, that's the only time you can really practice it, right? It's
Yes.
almost this, that's what I teach actually my clients, is that it's this illusion that you're going to be able to be more present later, right?
In
Because
the
the only
future.
moment to be present in is this moment. And so I love this piece that you've said, which is that presence is happiness, because I think that we think happiness is achieving something. But what is it really, that's what's the gold sort of nugget within that? It's actually deep presence with oneself. And so I wonder, if we have access to presence through meditation, I wonder why it's so difficult for us to try to be with ourselves, because I think what comes up for people when they do start meditating is they feel really anxious. It's
Mm,
almost like, oh, I don't want to sit there and be with all my thoughts. Like,
yeah.
oh, like I get really, I don't know, it's not for me. What's happening in those first few breaths or minutes where someone's trying to drop in and they're starting to feel maybe worse now that they've stopped busying themselves and running around?
Distracting, right? We're so used to distracting and numbing ourselves out. So, what happens is you feel like your mind is going all over the place, and you feel like, wow, I'm bad at this. I can't be present. And it's kind of shocking to you. But as we already said, that's human nature. So we can totally accept that now, that that happens to everybody, even the most advanced of meditators. But also, there's this saying that, if we could just sit alone in silence with our thoughts, then there would be world peace. That is truly the thing. Each of us individually need to find that peace. So it is a hard thing. It's an understandably hard thing. But to understand that it's not you being bad at it, it's human nature, I think is the first step. And the second step is to
Mm-hmm.
understand that that's not what meditation is. Meditation isn't just being present. That's what everybody gets wrong about it. The definition of meditation isn't just focusing on that focal point. So here's the neuroscience of it and the definition based off of like both tradition and neuroscience. So your teacher is going to give you a focal point. That focal point could be your breath. It could be a word you repeat. Whatever, the focal point is, a visual that you're envisioning. So you're focusing on it. And then a few seconds later, what is happening? Well, your mind goes to that negative place, likely. It's mind wandering. Sometimes it's neutral, but we have a negativity bias as humans. So tends to be negative. So our mind will wander. Second step of meditation happens to everybody, most advanced of meditators. It is part of meditation. Third step is different than what happens when our mind wanders throughout the day. We notice the mind wanders. So that is a critical step. We notice, wait, I was supposed to be focusing on my breath, but I'm thinking about what Susie said to me 10 years ago and how that wasn't fair. Okay, I'm noticing. Now the brain's going to determine, is this important or not? So we pick up a network of activity called the salience network. It determines, is this salient? Is this important? And you know what Susie said to me 10 years ago is not as important as this exercise right now. So I'm going to let it go. If you're smelling smoke and the house is on fire, it's important. Stop meditation, get out of the house. But if it's not that, come back. So then you're going to refocus. So your brain has to pick up specific neural activity to refocus. That's the strengthening of the neural networks that we're working on. It's the skill of going back from the mind wandering, which is the default mode network, to the focus, which is the central executive network of brain activity. We want to be there more often, but in order to be there more often, we have to practice, because guess what? Default mode network, mind wandering, that's default. That's where our brain, it's called that for a reason. It is the default. So it takes that practice.
This is so funny and just synchronistic, because I was actually doing my own personal research on the default mode network recently, because I have such a wandering mind. I mean, I guess this is just human nature. This is not a specific to Sam thing, right? As many people might think. Like, no, like I'm definitely like I have way more thoughts than you, right? But it's all humans.
Creative people do tend to have more thoughts like that, wandering mind. So default mode network is very active when you're creative. So I'm not saying it's bad to have mind wandering, because sometimes, right, when we want to be creative, we need that mind wandering. We're all over the place. We have all these ideas. We need to write it all down and brainstorm. That's actually a great thing. The thing that meditation teaches us is how to turn it off. We don't want to always be there. We want to learn how to turn it off and on. It's wonderful that you can be creative and that you have a wandering mind. That's not a bad thing. It's just we need to learn how to control it rather than it controlling us.
Yes. And the default mode network, let me know if I'm wrong about this, but does that, how do I want to phrase this? I guess, does that state within the brain expend more energy as opposed to the state that we enter when we have meditated?
I think it depends on how well practiced you are.
Okay, yeah, because when I think of default mode network, I also think of what our brain, the mode that it might be in when we're scrolling on Instagram. Would that be default mode?
Yes, it definitely would be default mode.
And it's so draining. We all know what it feels like to have doom scrolled for like 4 hours. And so we
and
need
there's a meditation for that in the book too, for doom scrolling.
Meditation for doom scrolling.
Because we all know it. It's a common real world issue we have.
It's so real and it's so addicting. And I have a new app on my phone called One Sec, where it actually blocks me opening Instagram without taking a deep breath. And oh my God, it was the bane of my existence for a week, because I was so addicted to opening the app and just waiting in line, like you said. Or literally the other day I was like trying to barbecue some hot dogs, and it's like 7 minutes, and I'm like wanting to open my phone. And I'm like, wow, we're so distracted. But again, what I've learned since taking this break from it is that I guess my default mode network is not as active. I am more present, and I just have way more energy.
I love that app. It forces you to do a one breath meditation.
It does, a one breath meditation. And then it's like, do you still want to open? And I'm like, no.
No.
Sometimes I do, because I use it obviously as a tool for work and communication. And I do love connecting with my community, but that's different than just getting on mindlessly, not even realizing that you're on. And then all of a sudden you're like, how many hours has gone by? And you feel exhausted, even though you just moved your thumb. And so I'm kind of curious to know if you know what's happening in our brain when we're doom scrolling.
Well, first of all, the light of the screen is affecting you. So it increases cortisol. So that stress hormone that makes us alert. So cortisol is not a bad thing, but it's making you very alert. And too much cortisol is very, very draining. It also dysregulates our dopamine. And meditation is well known to regulate your dopamine in contrast. And so when we're scrolling, as you said, it's very mindless. And a lot of the stuff we scroll through is negative. There's a negativity bias in humans, right? All the news is negative. The comments are negative. The comments you may get are negative. And our brain is doing that negativity in order to protect us, right? What are the threats in the world? What are the threats around us socially, etc.? But it's overwhelming. And you know what? You are safe. You're at home. You have your phone in your hand. You're safe.
Right.
Like, right? So your brain is getting convinced that you're not safe because you're seeing all that negative stuff, all that social negative stuff, all of the things going on the other side of the world that are negative. And so that's another thing that's happening when we're doom scrolling.
Yeah, like our brains don't know the difference between real and imaginary outside of your
It's true.
house, 500 countries away. Like, no, our brain is not able to discern that. And it sounds like what meditation really does is show your body where you are in space and that that space is a safe space
Yes,
through our breath.
absolutely. So to the point of your brain doesn't know the difference between when you're looking at this, horrific picture of something going on the other side of the world and you are going to release the same chemical cocktail as if you're there. It's it doesn't really know the difference. You're going to have the same
Wow.
neural activity, very similar, at least as if you were actually experiencing it, especially because we're compassionate creatures. And so the opposite is true too, though. And I talk about this quite a bit in meditation for the real world, and I integrate it into the meditations that I teach. So when you look at a video or image of nature, your brain doesn't know the difference either. And you start to hear and feel the difference from that when you
Mm.
hear the sound of the waves crashing in, right? That's so we when those waves are like intensely crashing and that's like brown noise. There's these different types of noise, pink noise, white noise that affect our brain and can, especially when they're nature sounds, improve our memory, improve our focus. So I always integrate nature sounds and music that has been engineered to optimize your brain waves with specific frequencies to help you focus. Because a lot of people, that's their top thing is I can't focus enough to meditate, right? But when I
Mm-hmm.
looked into the research for this book on different sounds and how they affect us, nature sounds, specific frequencies, I found that the researchers literally call these sounds digital drugs. That's how powerful they are because we can trick our brain into having these experiences. So I have a gift for your listeners at meditationfortherealworld.com. I have a meditation challenge, 5 days, less than 10 minutes a day, and it incorporates these nature sounds and these sounds that have the specific frequencies to help you get into that flow state, to get into presence quicker and stay there longer. So that's at meditationfortherealworld.com. You can find out about how to get the books and all of that stuff there
Yay.
too.
Well, this is so fascinating, and it makes sense given what we talked about, how the brain can't tell the difference between real and imaginary. And so we often create those worst case scenarios in our mind or engage with really negative content online. And then, of course,
Mm-hmm.
our body's releasing that cortisol. We're having that chemical cocktail, as you say, as if we're there. But then likewise, if we look on the other side of the spectrum, we can use that to our advantage. What sounds do we know and have research for that shows actually reduces those effects too? And so, yeah, it makes so much sense. And I don't know why I haven't thought to listen to more nature sounds, but
Yeah.
that's definitely going to be a part of my meditation routine because that's why we go outside for a
It
walk,
is.
right? To hear
Mm-hmm.
the leaves rustling. I try really hard. I love listening to music when I walk, but I also try to do walks where I'm trying to hear the birds.
Yes. Yes.
And you know what's so funny? I had this realization the other day that birds chirp at all times during the day, not just the morning. But during the afternoon, I'm usually so distracted that I can't hear them. In the morning, I'm a bit slower. Maybe even my brain waves are slower. And so I notice it really prominently. But as I walk outside in the afternoon, I'm like, oh, I never hear the birds. But recently I was trying to listen for them and they were there. And so it's just interesting too that maybe my default mode network was active and therefore I had all of these like bouncing around thoughts that had
Yes.
more
You
of my
weren't
attention
present.
than what was going on. I wasn't present. It's
Yeah.
almost like, and it's crazy. I feel like we're all just walking like faceless robots. Like I
Zombies.
sometimes
Yes.
we're zombies. Sometimes I become deeply present and I'm like, who was controlling my body? Like
Yes.
I wasn't, it feels like I wasn't even there, but I was, right? Like I'm the person who got up, I brushed my teeth, I put my clothes on, but who was doing that if I wasn't present?
And I think that nature is the perfect anecdote. And so when we look into the research of how those times of just walking in nature, listening to the sound of the birds, forest bathing is what they call it in Japan. And the research has shown that just walking in the woods meditatively, it releases specific aerosols in the air that you can smell. And the smells of these will
Wow.
make your antibodies in your system improve. So you're going to have more natural killer cells, which help with viruses and fighting cancer. So it's a really big deal to improve your immunity. So also just getting into nature. And we can do what I talk about in a section of the book called walking meditation. And that's like you
Hmm.
said, maybe you don't put on a podcast or music for that a short period of time and you just listen to the nature sounds. And my favorite cue, I have a whole bunch of cues you can do when you're in that walking meditation, is my favorite cue is walk like you're the happiest person on earth. What would it
Oh, I
be
love
like?
that.
And you start to, yeah, you smile, you start to stand taller. It's a thought experiment. You're not saying I am the happiest person on earth, but you walk as if you were. And your thoughts change. Would the happiest person on earth be worried about that email? No. Would they be listening to the birds? Yes. And then you start to realize, oh wow, this is what it feels like. Oh, I'm present. Sometimes I'm like, I am the happiest person on earth. So taking those little pauses in nature can make a profound difference. I have another part of the book where I talk about taking your shoes off. Say you're walking through the woods and then you sit on a bench or a rock, take your shoes off, put them in the ground. This sounds so woo woo, but that's called earthing according to the scientists. We call it colloquially grounding. But physical contact with the negative electrons of the earth are very healing. And it seems like the science is just illuminating what we've all known for ages. Get back to nature, right? Like take your shoes off and touch the tree, smell the air, listen to the birds. When we put our feet in contact with the earth, whether it's the sand or the dirt, what children love to do so naturally, it reduces inflammation significantly, reduces anxiety and depression. It even lowers your blood sugar spikes, which blows my mind. Just to be in physical contact with nature, like touch it.
It's fascinating. And it makes sense when we consider that we are nature,
Yes.
right? We're really just connecting with ourselves to be out there. Um, and you shared so many incredible things that I'm sure by now people are thinking, oh my God, I just want to do my meditations now. But if you were to suggest any part of your book or any of the 83 meditations that you've mentioned, what do you think would be the most effective? And I know that it's probably dependent on what situation they're in and what they're
Yes.
facing, but what could be one of the easiest and most effective ways for people to get started and start building up their meditation muscle?
Yeah, let's do a 1 minute meditation to put it to practice. I call this the five senses meditation. And so you can memorize it. And all the 1 minute meditations throughout the book, you really just memorize them and you can guide yourself through a 1 minute meditation. So this is perhaps you get a stressful email and you're about to answer it really rashly, but you're like, you know what? Turn my chair around, look out the window, take a moment, take a pause. Or maybe you're in nature and you just sat down on that bench and you took your shoes off and you put them in the grass and you're pausing for a moment. You could do this 1 minute meditation there. So, a variety of different uses for it. So, first thing is you're going to look away from screens if you can. And if you're driving, you can still do this meditation with us because your eyes are looking out in front of you. If we want to look out a window, if possible, your eyes and brain like that expansive vision, that soft gaze, the relaxed eyes. Notice what you see. If you can't look out a window, just look far away from you, wherever you are in your space, and let your vision expand. Notice textures, colors, lights. Optional, if it's safe and you're comfortable to do so, you're welcome to close your eyes. It's not required, but you'd still notice colors, lights, textures. And then notice what you hear from far away, outside, to up close, my voice, to perhaps even your own breath if you listen very carefully. Take a deep inhale through the nose. Notice any smells. Exhale slowly. Taste any tastes that are present. And then shift your awareness to your body, your physical body. Notice what you feel inside. You might feel compelled to adjust your posture, stretch, or move a little. Listen. Whatever your body needs, listen. There's so much wisdom in the body. If you pay attention, you might tap into that wisdom. And then begin to take in all the senses at once, the physical body, tastes, smells, what you hear. If your eyes are closed, flutter your eyelashes, notice what you see too. Bringing that awareness of all 5 senses simultaneously. Notice the results as you continue to listen to us.
Wow.
That is the taste, the 1-minute meditation taste of the first meditation in the meditation challenge. I have a 10-minute version that explains that and explains the science and how to apply it a little bit. So that's at meditationfortherealworld.com.
Amazing. Well, now you can hear it in my voice, can't you, Anne?
Softer, relax. Yes.
Relaxed, softer. I'm so proud of you for penning this book, sharing it with us. So beautifully illustrated, easy for anyone to pick up and read and even become meditative as they go through it. So I'm just so grateful. And you said at meditation for the real world.
Meditationfortherealworld.com, the title of the book, and you'll find out how to get the book, also science of yoga, how to actually have a meditation album that has all of those nature sounds that have been engineered to optimize your brain waves, how to get, of course, on the meditation challenge. So all of that's at meditationfortherealworld.com. And, this is a perfect gift book for somebody too, especially because it's so gorgeous and hardcover illustrated, so it's very different than other meditation books. So I hope you'll consider getting it for a gift for somebody you love and care about. Spreading meditation.
It really is a gorgeous book. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it because it wasn't boring. It was such a gorgeous format and easy to read and flip through. So thank you so much, Anne, for believing in yourself, the power of meditation, and for sharing it with our listeners and the world. You also are such an incredible example of someone who this work has really impacted. I can feel it in your energy. And I'm sure the people who benefit from your content can feel that from you too. And so I'm so grateful that you went from non-meditator to advanced practitioner so that you could share this practice with us in a way that feels digestible and actionable.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.